code that is shown on the screen.
Okay, thank you, Juan. I'm going to go ahead and move on. Okay, and then Juan, you had a couple of notes about our scope sheet as well.
Oh yeah, this is actually Andrew's part. So I don't know if you want to briefly explain.
So we summarized, we had an in-person meeting and we created our scope sheet where our problem statement came out to be that we do not have a process to create or maintain a manual that meets the needs of our customers. And then we'll go over some of those items in detail on the next slides. One of the things that we had,
So
go ahead, Juan, if you want to speak to this one as well.
yes, I'll do this one. Sorry, Bill. So here we can see basically the board of our future state as it progressed. This was from the initial thought process as the team, brainstormed, taking in consideration existing problems to see the use of the installation manuals. But later on, we decided not to pursue with this idea and go another route.
And as everyone, throughout the Kaizens, we always come up with obstacles. Some of ours were keeping the manual as a separate process, required time scheduled into the workflow, and needed experienced resources. Also, the location of the current manual was not really known, still not really known throughout the company. Throughout the process, we tried to think of starting from beginning using different software, yet we had problems with this method as well. Also, we needed to update, we found out that we needed to update the existing manual to the latest standards, because so we had, it was just an outdated one. And we also had we understand that we had to redirect our Kaizen scope.
So one of the opportunities we had was we did a lean training session with Brad, and we learned how to do an effective SIPOC. So we regrouped, used the SIPOC map to look at the supplier input requirements, the process, the output, and the customer, and what their requirements are. And then that gave us a much better idea of what we needed to focus on. As we were doing this, we had an aha moment. That's when it hit us. We didn't want to create a whole new process to get the manual done at the beginning of all of the normal processes. We really wanted the manual to become a byproduct of the work that we're already doing. So when fabs are released to the shop now, they've had all of the logic and the bugs worked out. We decided to create the manual from released fabs instead of starting at the beginning of the process.
So that got us to this more simplified map. So you saw the initial one where we had so many items on there, and now starting from a finished project, we now came up with this simplified process map. So the first step is planning what to build, but again, starting from a finished project, then scheduling it, creating the actual sheets, checking it, updating and publishing, and then advertising the new sheets.
So what's next for our process? We'll be completing our Swiss for each of the steps in the new simplified process. Figure out how to get this new process to fit within our current process flow. And there's a picture of our current Jumpstart to Drafting process map and our installation manual. Try to get that to be incorporated in that flow process. So next would be trying to beta test this and then this new process with our current project.
What else we got next? Working with the drafting managers to schedule a consistent resource. Working with the takeoff group, PC, PE to get actual content. Study completed job units. And then we're going to look into methods of advertising the contents of the manual.
And maybe our advertising will include a few pop-ups.
Pop-ups, yes, as you saw. Any questions?
Love the QR code. That was really cool.
I have a question. So will this process make the installation, does this mean that the installation manual for a certain job will be created after it's built? What's the timeline?
So one of the things that we saw in our scope sheet was job specifics would be outside of the scope of this Kaizen team's efforts. So when we were first looking at this, we kind of thought along those lines of, well, shouldn't we just build exactly what we need and then apply it to this job? So we thought, okay, cool, we can build new job specific things and put them in advance so that all of the logic and details are worked out. But really what we saw is that our current processes evolve. You have to develop what that system's doing. Steve mentioned it earlier in just the introduction, is that things change as you go. You don't get that full understanding of exactly what has to happen when you're first conceptualizing what that system is doing. So because that was outside of the scope to begin with, that's why we decided that we want to just use finished projects, and then that way we can flesh out the entire installation manual. We can add additional components as necessary if we see that there's something that's worked and it's trending towards a new system or it's a new standard. We can add those extra pages into the installation manual as completed. But we didn't want to try to build the installation manual pages from scratch for conceptual or things that are coming all the way from like your process, Sahara Jumpstart.
Who do you feel are the main customers for this process as you guys envision it now?
So the shop, we thought when we were first looking at this, was one of our main customers, but it turns out that they have their own SOPs, and most of the shop guys didn't even know that we had an installation manual, let alone trying to use it and incorporate it. But what we do see is that when we go to decide how the logic of a system works and how parts and pieces need to come together, that we actually use it a lot more in engineering.
And we've had a couple external customers every once in a while for consultants ask for some. And then sometimes, very few, but sometimes the field has asked for a couple field installation things to be modeled up for them.
Do you feel like this document would help with training or new employees?
Yes. Yeah, we like the idea of helping, using it as a guide. You know what, one of the things that we see is that when you have that visual, it's kind of the difference between looking at a 2D version that we used to build in AutoCAD compared to now we can open up the BIM 360 and see the intent of how that building looks. It's really the same difference of looking at just a detail cut compared to seeing how the parts are assembled together and the intention of how they work and the sealant details and all of that. So definitely could be a good training mechanism still.
Could definitely see it for training for Jumpstart, right? As we bring new employees in, because, you know, we're not starting with a completed product, right? We're starting from scratch. And so as we're training, you know, it's hard to go back and look at existing shop drawings as we've, you know, been continually removing things from them, right, that need to be considered. So the installation manual showing, you know, the sealants and how the joinery works and things like that. Definitely for training everyone when they're designing new systems, right? Or modifying existing systems to make sure we don't miss something. So definitely training in that respect.
Yeah, I really liked the QR code showing that little video. But I'm also thinking of, you have an installation manual, but even just seeing how a splice sleeve is done out in the field, or how a video of how you silicone up the jet ski or whatever, just for anybody to be able to look at that. And because we're building stuff and we're working on stuff, but we've never seen it installed. How they install a unit, how do they install a strip window, a video of them setting a whole unit or setting the doors, or just, I mean, videos, just watching that and having a little instruction and saying what they're doing, how they even put the units together, how they cut parts. I'm just thinking, that made me just think of, we're looking at 2D drawings and we're like, I don't really see what this is. It's all black and white. But if I see a video and it's explaining what they're doing, oh, that's what I've been working on in here. Oh, these are the anchors. This is why I need a hard hole. You know, just stuff like that. I mean, I think that would be great, but just being able to see it, because they do go out and we go out and see it installed sometimes, but having a video clip of, and specifically saying this is an end down and this is how we seal it up and stuff like that. I mean, to me, that really is very helpful, especially if you're new.
And to Joe's point, I think not just for us in the office, but also for the field to get the same, you know, the same result. Because I know from time to time we get pictures that seal runners or pieces are not where they're supposed to be. They tell us like, are they cut wrong? And then we find out that no, they were just installed wrong. So it would be nice to associate like the door jamb. This is like the end product, like, yeah, like black and white lines versus a true image.
Have you guys looked into using like augmented reality QR codes?
No, we actually looked at a lot of things, which is how that jam board you saw got populated. We tossed around all of these ideas, but really we had to rein it in because we saw the resources that we might have available. And even the ideas of creating the videos for specific content and placing them in places, that was going down a bunch of weird rabbit holes. So we actually had to rein that back in to where that's not part of our current plan. That was one of our initial experiments that just didn't pan out.
And part of that too is remembering the purpose of the manual is for logic documentation. We're not here to train the field. So they have their own crews and their own way. They have to train their guys. The manual's not for that. It's a documentation of our standard logic for the W75 system. So that's where too we had to rein it in because, again, once a standard changes, now all those videos, everything's void. And who's going to update those? And, you know, things like that. So yeah, like Bill said, it kind of took us down too many paths. We had great ideas. We'd have to change the whole manual and the way it is now. And the point was we need to finish the manual, get it up to date, and document our current logic.
And then part of doing that, we are starting to develop what is the process itself for creating the pages. You saw in that simplified map that Esley spoke about, that's a very clean set of steps at this point. And really, we're at the point where we just need to finish creating the documentation of those, developing who's going to be doing the actual work and the timing of it. And then creating that mechanism for advertising.
Yeah, I think also, you know, we had some stuff come up with the little, you know, 1, 2, 3 splice that happens between the two units as Ray was doing some experiments in the shop. And it's like, you know, he was seeing some things where it's like, if we do it this other way, it works better. But, you know, where do you document that? And I think the installation manual is the perfect place. So I think that's another use for that manual, is to document our standards of what we want, how we, you know, engineering wise, how do we see that system going together so that everybody in the company knows what the engineering standards are, right? So I think that's the thing I'm seeing is it's like, it's more, and I know everybody wants to use it for all sorts of things, but really It should just be our capture method of the engineering of the system, so everybody's aware of how the system is set up to perform. And then if people have other things they want to do with it, they should take those projects on and do them themselves, you know. But I think that's a good use. So what, going forward, what do you see this looking like then? You know, what does next week look like? You know, what does this process look like?
So we're making the Swisses for that new simplified process. So the first one we're still working on is how to plan it based on completed jobs, what's the triggers, and then what's going to happen to get it planned, scheduled resources, so that it is just part of a workflow, you know, request on who's going to do it, that kind of stuff. And then just worked out the rest of the Swisses for each. So once we plan it, schedule it, actually doing it, and also have a checking method as well as an advertising to advertise when something new got added or updated. So those are the Swisses we're working on currently, just what's going to happen at each one of those steps.
And we developed some guidelines. We're going to start to figure out what's the folder structure for where do we put our documents when we have these meetings with the PC and the PE on completed projects. Bring those files in, it gives us a working place. We've already created a group through IT that's the installation manual support team, very similar to the training support team that was built from the Kaizens that we started from our very first offsite that are still ongoing, that training support team. You can contact at any time if you want to submit a video. The installation manual support team will have a very similar method where we, you know, capture what's happening. We assign team members to assist in the process so that we who have developed what the process is can guide whoever needs to be included in that along the steps that we're going to take to pull finished job information and then turn it into our manual pages.
So one of our resources would be the finished products of, you know, unit drawings, fab tickets, you know, and using that as a resource instead of recreating that, you know, like what Esley's currently doing is recreating that or from scratch, right? And generating those fabs and those notches and what they look like. But now we would use the finished product of what the job has been built, checked, and approved, and, you know, actually being assembled and built in our shops so that we could use those finished products that have been, you know, tested and checked and is actually being built instead of just assuming what we think those fabs would look like and those intersections and all that. So using a finished product to create that installation manual sheet.
Yeah, and
yeah.
You're on mute, Margie.
I wasn't. Okay, no, because we were looking into that and we saw that there was a lot of those units that we created in the takeoff team, the fabrication, that are already in BIM, you know, that include the notches. I mean, there's like gaskets and stuff, so we can utilize that and put that into the manual. So that was that was part of the aha moment that we were looking into.
Yeah, I was asking the same thing. Like, do we have any kind of Fab Instruction Manual somewhere, like a standard Fab Instruction Manual, like an installation manual, that will make that will help the Fab team also, you know, and sometimes the drafters also, you know, to understand the details correctly.
Yeah, I think the installation manual covers most of that, you know, maybe not every little nook and cranny, but, you know, if you really wanted to see how things go together, that manual covers most of that.
Yeah, I didn't see that, but yeah, I will go through that. Thank you.
Yeah, it just covers a logic, right? I mean, that goes back down to our, you know, what we were excluded from our scope was job specifics, you know, the difference between a 1/2-inch live load and a, you know, 3/8 live load. We wouldn't want to have to keep updating the manual or adding to that just because of those, you know, small, you know, job specific detail.
Yep.
All right, perfect. Thank you, team
Great
one.
Great QR code. I got like a nice idea.
Thank
using
you.
QR code.
Job team one.
Nice presentation.
Yes.
All right, sweet.
Good job.
All right, so
let's
now
all have them clap and applaud. Let's do it for real. That was weak.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Unmute.
Let's do it.
Good job, you guys.
So even if you turn it in, you should still be able to click on it and open it.
I muted everyone.